Very good. Thank you, Jim. My name is Jason Perot, and I call to order this Monday, March 29th meeting of the Board of Selectmen Interview Subcommittee. Before we begin the meeting, I have some remote meeting details to attend to. This open meeting of the Northborough Board of Selectmen Interview Subcommittee is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12th, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we've been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings. And as such, the governor's order suspends the requirements of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which is referenced at the top of our posted agenda for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will not feature public comment. This meeting is being conducted remotely using the Zoom conferencing application. Our posted meeting agenda notes the way that the meeting can be viewed. In this case, for this meeting tonight, the only viewing option is the YouTube live stream, which you can find the link to by going to the town website and looking for the Northborough remote meeting button, which will take you to the right place. Please take note that this meeting is being recorded. Be aware that other folks may be able to see you. Take care not to screen share your computer. Anything you broadcast may be captured by the recording. Permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I will go through the agenda item and each of the speakers and participants. After that portion is concluded, this is actually more appropriate for a normal public meeting. This meeting is conducting interviews of applicants for a town board. So I can skip this part. I'll note that any vote taken at this meeting will be conducted by roll call. We don't anticipate taking any votes this evening. We'll just be conducting the interviews and receiving the information. Next, I'd like to confirm member access for the participants who will be here throughout the meeting. When I call your name, please unmute and respond in the affirmative. I'm Jason Perot, member of the Board of Selectmen. Scott Rogers, member of the Board of Selectmen.
Here.
And Paul Tagliaferri, clerk of the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Here.
Thank you both. We also have Dim DiGiulio as our host, conducting this Zoom meeting for us tonight, providing our technical assistance. We'll confirm the additional remote participants at the time they're brought into the meeting for their respective agenda items. That concludes that bit of business. I'd now like to just quickly summarize the purpose of this meeting. The Board of Selectmen Interview Subcommittee is conducting interviews for appointments to the Zoning Board of Appeals. There are 3 seats up for reappointment. 2 of those are regular seats for which the incumbents are seeking reappointment. One of them is an alternate seat for which the incumbent is not seeking reappointment. In addition to the 2 incumbents seeking reappointment, we have 4 new applicants. We will be interviewing those applicants this evening. We'll have a second meeting on Wednesday, March 31st, this Wednesday, where we will speak with the 2 incumbents. And then following that, at that meeting, we, Scott Rogers and I will deliberate and arrive at our recommendation to be presented to the Board of Selectmen at its April 12th meeting. Just noting that I and Scott Rogers are substituting this evening. Our regular interview subcommittee members, Leslie Rattan and Tim Kalin, perceive themselves to have conflict of interest with respect to some of the applicants. And for that reason, Scott and I are substituting in their place to conduct the interviews. We also have with us Zoning Board of Appeals Clerk Paul Tagliaferri. Paul's here tonight for the new applicants if they have any questions about the role of the ZBA, the way ZBA operations are conducted, the time requirements, workload, and everything such as that. Paul will be the resource to provide that information. There will be no deliberation, as I said, this evening. That will follow at the Wednesday meeting this week. So, having concluded all of that, Just one more final thing. I did try to contact each of the 4 applicants for this evening's interviews by email earlier today. In the interest of conducting the interviews as fairly as possible, we notified them that we would ask them not to be viewing the YouTube live stream in advance and seeing the interviews of the applicants who precede them. We'd rather have each one come in cold, if you will, without having had any prior information or knowledge about what's transpired previously. So if anyone is also viewing the YouTube live stream among the 4 applicants, I'd ask you to please discontinue doing that. And also please ask any family members or anyone else who might be watching not to be in communication with you about what goes on with applicants who precede you. So with that, I'll reach for my first set of information. And Jim, we're ready for our first contestant, Mr. John Wickstead. Hello, John.
How are you?
Good, very good.
Hi, John.
How are you guys doing?
Excellent. Thank you for being here this evening. Our time is short, and we're going to work through kind of a common list of questions for the most part with each of our applicants. We've received your application and any other additional information you may have submitted with it. We reviewed that. So if you're ready to go, we can begin.
Sure.
Could you please just state how long you've been a resident of the town, year of residency?
Yeah, I've been a resident since 2004.
2004. Okay, thank you. And what prompts you to volunteer at this time? And why the ZBA as opposed to another town board or committee that is looking for volunteers?
Well, you know, as you guys know, because you've heard me on the calls to the board of selectmen, you know, we got involved sort of, you know, in town. I think this happens to a lot of people. You get involved over one issue, and then you start to see how the town works, and you start to get a little interested in it, and you get involved in some other issues. And, you know, I've spent a lot of time poring over the town website in a way I never thought I would. And you get a sense of the process of how the town actually works, of how things get done. And you realize this is just people who are trying to do the right thing in town, trying to make our town better. And, you know, that's something I'd like to be part of. So, you know, having looked at this now, you know, over the course of a year or so, you know, the ZBA in particular is a place where process is important, where you have to have a sense of, you know, what's the intent of the bylaws and what's the intent of the zoning regulations, and, you know, what's the master plan say about where we want to be in the future, and try and apply those things in a sensible and, you know, straightforward and, you know, honest fashion. I think that's a useful and important part of being in town.
Okay. What's your understanding of the role of the ZBA?
Well, I mean, it's, you know, my understanding that the ZBA really is, you know, it's a board that allows for, you know, interpretation of the zoning bylaws under certain circumstances where, you know, people may need, you know, a variance from the, you know, from the strict application of the guidelines for, you know, whatever project it is that they happen to be, you know, trying to accomplish with their land. You know, these appeals and variances go with the land, not with the individuals. So it's much more about the land and the project, and not really about the individuals. And I think, you know, the zoning bylaws, as you know, as I've seen in a couple of instances, you know, are written in a way where it's hard to interpret how they exactly fit onto any given piece of property. And I think the ZBA has to kind of take a look at, you know, what's the intent of the bylaw and what's good for the town and what's good for the property, and how does that all fit together to come up with a reasonable solution that allows people to, you know, enjoy their, you know, land in whatever way they see fit, and still fit within, you know, the spirit of you know, the town regulations and the town of Northborough.
Thank you. Do you have an understanding of the time commitment and preparation required, both in meetings and outside of meetings, to capably, constructively, and reliably serve on the ZBA?
Yeah, I spoke with Jeff Kerr, who used to be on the ZBA, I believe, and went over with Jeff in some detail. What does this actually require? For me in particular, I commute to Boston, and looking at some of the other boards, it's clearly in some of the elected positions in town, like my schedule just doesn't really allow for that. It's the ZBA looks like it's a real commitment, but it's a commitment that I can make in honest good faith with the amount of time that I have and with the schedule commitments that I have, doing other things with, family and professional responsibilities. But it's certainly something, the ZBA looks like, this is a manageable, position for me.
Okay, very good. Can you briefly state your qualifications in the sense that they pertain to service on the ZBA?
Well, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a realtor. I don't really have much to do with real estate. I've lived in Northborough for a long time, and I've spent an inordinate amount of time in the last year reading through the zoning bylaws and various regulations in town on how things are governed. So I would say that my knowledge of zoning regulations is fairly up to date.
Very good. And have you ever previously appeared as a petitioner before a zoning board of appeals?
No, actually, I haven't. It's funny, we were in the position I think a lot of families get a few years back. My kids were getting bigger and the house seemed to be getting smaller. And, we were looking to build either, sort of at that point of like, do you move to a different house or do you just build an addition on the side? And we decided to put a garage up with with a bedroom above the garage. And one of the local architects in town, Dario DeMar, was super helpful in this and, laid out the maps for us and said, look, this is what you can do within the zoning regulations. And this is what you might want to do, but you'd need a variance for it. And this is how the process works. And in the end, we just, we went with what was, allowed on the existing zoning and it worked out great for us. So.
Great. Have you ever offered input at a ZBA or planning board public hearing?
I have offered lots of input at the planning board public hearings. Yes, anybody who wants to can look back at really any of the planning board meetings in the last year and hear my dulcet tones offering plenty of advice.
Very good. Yeah, it's a standard set of questions. So.
It's okay, Scott. You can laugh. I order plenty of input at the Board of Selectmen meetings too, so you guys are
right. Not unfamiliar. Could you tell us what preparation or research you have undertaken relating to the ZBA and zoning laws for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and the town of Northborough?
Yeah, I look for a job description. Actually, I spent some time online looking at various town descriptions for ZBA job descriptions. I couldn't really find a specific job description for Northborough, but I did find them for a number of other towns and looked at sort of, exactly what it, what's the sort of intent of the ZBA and how does it work and the makeup of the committee and that sort of thing.
Okay. Spoken with any current ZBA members, planning board members, other people who have been involved?
No, not really. I spoke with Jeff Kerr because he's a friend of mine through the, scout troop about being on the ZBA and what it requires and, what his experience with it was and, why he's no longer doing it and what his sort of plans for the future were. And, it's interesting. I think he, he had a lot to say about it that was, positive.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I have to ask this question. On your application, you indicated that you regularly attend town meeting. Could you clarify over the term of your residency how frequent that has been?
Oh yeah, I think the last town meeting I was at, we were voting at White Cliffs, but it's not a regular, I don't regularly attend. And in fact, my wife has given me a hard time about it over the last couple of years, particularly last year. She said, it's COVID. You have no excuse. It's right at the high school. So
that's a dozen times, half dozen times? I'm just trying to get a sense of what.
I couldn't say. Not regularly.
Okay. And other than the recent marijuana prohibition warrant article, which was featured at the 2018 town meeting, do you recall any other zoning bylaw matter that came before town meeting on a night you were in attendance that was of interest or concern to you?
A zoning board issue that was of interest or concern to me at a town meeting. Not off the top of my head.
Okay. Scott, do you have any other questions?
No, just John. Thanks for the willingness to participate and volunteer for a board. The benefit of having the standard list is that I don't have to go off script too much and try to do something that's inconsistent with the other applicants. So thanks for the time tonight.
Thank you.
And John, do you have any questions you want to direct to us or to Paul regarding ZBA?
Well, Paul in particular, I know you've seen, lots of people come and go. What do you find is sort of a successful person on the ZBA? What is it that you're, kind of interested in looking for?
I think having some sort of legal background is definitely a plus. But I also think I'm not a lawyer myself, but having a deep understanding of the bylaws, especially in town, is key. Understanding what approvals or denials based on special permits and variances are. I took several classes from the time I started as an alternate to becoming a full member. I also think just broadly town knowledge and being immersed in the community, and having an ability to synthesize large amounts of data, and in some cases having to make tough decisions. I think that those are really the keys to make a successful zoning board of appeal. I mean, we're essentially a quasi, judicial type of board. We don't really make the laws, that's the planning board job, but, it's being able to sort of understand the town, the community, and how the bylaws should be sort of enforced.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Paul, just for informational purposes, how long have you served on the ZBA, and what's the breakdown of alternate versus regular member?
I believe I was a alternate for about 1.5 years to 2 years, and then I took over for Jeff Leland about 3 to 4 years ago.
You two guys swapped, right? Between
Yes.
the regular and alternates.
Yeah.
Right. Got it.
Yep, that's correct.
Thank you, Paul. John, any other questions?
No, I don't think so. Thank you guys. Appreciate your time. I know you've
Okay.
got a lot of people to get through.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your interest, and we will be making some decisions on Wednesday night.
Thanks now.
Okay. Thank you, John.
Thanks, John.
Jim, next up we have Jonathan Ray. Gotta fix my view here. Gallery, there we are. Hello, Jonathan.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yes, thank you.
Hey, Jason.
We have here myself, Jason Perot, Scott Rogers, and Paul Tagliaferri from the ZBA as an informational resource for the interview. The first thing I want to do, I don't know if you received the email I sent out earlier, asking the candidates not to view the YouTube live stream prior to their own appearance, so as not to have the benefit essentially of hearing the questions and answers. So if you could, I'd like to ask you to state that you did not observe the prior interviews of candidates who preceded you.
I did not.
And did not receive any communications from anyone else who did, providing you with information about the prior interviews.
Have not.
Thank you. Our procedure here is to go through and interview each of the candidates. As I think about it now, I'm not sure that the candidates heard my original spiel here. We have 2 regular seats and 1 alternate seat up for reappointment. The incumbents in the regular seats are seeking reappointment. The alternate is not. And so we have 4 applicants this evening. We will conduct those interviews, just receiving the information. And then on Wednesday night, we will be talking to the 2 incumbents. Following that, we'll do the deliberation and formulate our recommendation to the Board of Selectmen at their April 12th meeting. So if you're ready, we can begin.
Ready. And first off, congratulations to have 6 people interested in 3 seats. It shows a lot of people that really want to be involved and really care about where they live.
Excellent. Can you tell us how long you've been a town resident, year of residency?
9 years.
Okay. And what prompts you to volunteer at this time? Why the ZBA rather than another town board or committee?
So I'm a second-time attempt here, right? So I don't know if you recall. I think it was.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think there are 3 very important, I guess, parts of town government for Northborough, and I think of the select board, the planning board, and the ZBA. It's a high-impact job, and it's one that requires a lot of commitment and preparation. So if I'm going to put in the time, I want to do it for something where I can make the most impact.
Thank you. In relation to that question, it's necessary for us to inquire. Obviously, there's been a particular issue in close proximity to your residential neighborhood. So we want to kind of make the distinction between the motivation from that versus just a more organic interest and motivation to serve on the town board. If you could address that.
I think the best proxy would be that I interviewed prior to anything happening on Bartlett Street. So my intentions to go for ZBA will precede any impact in my local neighborhood.
Okay, thank you. Could you tell us what is your understanding of the role of the ZBA?
So my understanding of the role of the ZBA is that it is a important role. It's one where you need to interpret the provisions of the town and be able to look at the town bylaws and understand anything to do with any area variances, any special permits, any use variances to better support the town as development.
Okay. I'm sorry, making quick notes here. And do you understand the time commitment and preparation required both in meetings and outside of meetings to capably, constructively, and reliably serve on the ZBA?
I do. It's extensive.
And you're able to make that commitment?
I'm able to prioritize it.
Okay. Can you briefly describe your qualifications in the sense that they would pertain to service on the ZBA?
Professional or personal or?
Well, we're looking for qualifications based on your understanding of what the ZBA does.
Sure.
What qualifications do you have to be able to provide that service?
I've been a 25-year leader in a med device company, and my current role, I lead a business development organization. It's a $2 billion part of a $10 billion company, and I'm responsible for mergers and acquisitions. As part of that, the deal belongs to me. So I'm part negotiator, part lawyer, part finance. And so I'm used to dealing with legal agreements, interpreting them, working with experts to make sure that everyone understands them and make sure that everyone's going in with a sort of consistent level of understanding. So I think from a career, just a work perspective, I deal with ambiguity, complexity, timelines, pressure. So I think those are things that help me for a position like the ZBA.
Okay, thank you. Have you ever appeared as a petitioner before a ZBA or planning board?
I have not.
Okay. Have you ever, we're asking this question because it's part of the standard questions.
Sure.
Have you ever offered input at a ZBA or planning board public hearing?
Oh, I have.
Yes.
Yeah.
And particular topics that you commented on?
Yeah, I'm thinking of when I actually was in the queue and was able to comment versus when it wasn't. I believe the one that I was able to comment on was some of the traffic and safety concerns on Bartlett with some of the distribution companies that have recently gone in.
Right. Can you describe the preparation or research you've undertaken relating to ZBA and zoning laws to prepare you to serve on the ZBA?
Sure. I think so. I know folks that are on the planning board or on the ZBA just through casual conversations about what's going on. I've had a good understanding. I have been a observer for both planning board and ZBA. So getting a sense of the things that come in, whether they be residential variances that folks want to be able to put a pool in, or maybe to do improvement to their property, or whether they be driven more by business, where people have business and they want to come and do a special permit, kind of like with Maytech Supply on Hudson when they wanted to go and do an area variance to be able to to make a change to what they had the right to do. So from that perspective, I mean, I call myself an interested observer, just learning process and understanding how it works.
Okay. On your application, you check yes, regularly attends town meeting. Can you quantify that more precisely for the period of time you've been a resident of Northborough?
I've been going to town meetings regularly for the past 4 or 5 years.
Annual town meeting we're referring to, not meetings.
The annual town meeting that usually happens in May.
Yes.
Yes, that's what I'm referring to.
Okay. And other than the recent marijuana prohibition warrant article in 2018, do you recall any other zoning matter on a town meeting warrant on a night you were in attendance that was of interest or concern to you?
Duplexes was on one time, and that was of interest to me.
That was the citizen petition. Is that what you're referring to? The
so you're gonna
petition?
categorize it much more specifically than I will. I'm just talking about the topic at hand that had to do with zoning, and maybe it was a citizen petition. I would say that there was a business that wanted to go and maybe it was the same one, but there was a builder that wanted to do something on Route 20 and was looking to get a variance or being able to put something in that that wasn't allowed through the bylaws. So the other one that I remember is, I think it was Abu, and it was a red barn, and then there were houses that were going in, and that might not have been a town meeting, but that was another one I was interested to see, and he did a great job. I thought that development came out great with those 3 new houses.
Okay, I assume some of those were matters that were before the planning board or the ZBA, not town meeting, but.
Yeah, okay. I mean, yeah, and candid, I don't know of anything that stood out particularly at the town meeting to be voted on. I found most of the interesting things to be done at the ZBA and planning board level. Okay.
Very good, thank you. Scott Rogers, do you have any other questions?
Just to thank you, Jonathan, for the willingness to serve on a board. Really appreciate the time.
And John, do you have any questions for us or any questions for Paul? Informational questions for ZBA operation or anything like that?
Yeah, I think from Board of Selectmen perspective, what does the ZBA do best in class, and where could there be room for improvement from your perspective, either Scott, Jason, or both?
It's as you say, it's a complex matter, both for the planning board and the ZBA, and the individuals on those boards, as Paul described to us earlier, really need to invest a lot of time to understand the bylaws, understand the legal framework within which they're operating, in order to arrive at decisions that are, not only desired or suitable, but will withstand any legal appeals that might be filed to them. So it's important to kind of navigate that and have an appropriate and full consideration of the matters that come before the ZBA in order to arrive at sound decisions, is the way I view it. Paul,
I can't say much better than that, and I'll defer to Paul too. But the ability to consider each case by case, right, and be able to weigh each applicant in front of them, and really with that understanding, be able to give a fair decision. Paul can probably say that better than I just did.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would just go back to what it takes to be, in my opinion, someone who's a valued member of the ZBA, and that's just a deep understanding of the bylaws and understanding specifically special permits and variances and all the different components that go into those two different types of decisions that we see the most of on the ZBA, and then obviously having a deep understanding of the town, the different communities, what separates it, sort of the northern part of town from, say, the business west or business east parts of town, and then being immersed into the community. Just having a deep understanding of all those different things is something that is definitely advantageous for the ZBA to have. And yeah.
Thank you.
Well, in closing, I'll just say that from my perspective, not just showing up on that night, but preparation's key. These are complicated matters. You can't just go in and solve it. You got to put in the time and understand the problem and go in ready to have a discussion on it. And you have my commitment on that. And then the last piece of this is I'm deeply involved in this town. I mean, I've done every trail I coach Little League baseball since 2013, coach soccer, coach softball, New England, the Northborough Education Foundation. Jason, I saw you there. I mean, these are the things that are important to me. So you've got a highly committed member of the community that is capable of doing the job, that is asking for the chance to put in the work to do it.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Jonathan. Appreciate you being
Be
here
well.
tonight.
Thank you.
Patience.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Very good. Which brings us to our third applicant.
Should have Ashley Davies next.
I have these all arranged at my feet on the floor here. Hello, Ashley.
Hi, Ashley.
Hi, how are you?
How are you?
Good.
As a preliminary, I don't know if you received my email earlier this evening, or earlier today, I should say, asking the applicants not to view the YouTube stream of the applicants who precede them. So I would just like to, for the record, ask you to attest that you did not observe the interviews of any candidates who preceded you via YouTube or any other means.
I did not.
And you did not receive any communication in any form from other persons who observed those interviews conveying to you the substance and the details of those interviews.
I did not.
Thank you. I apologize for the scrutiny.
That's
It's
fine.
a little different trying to do all this through remote means, have it publicly accessible. In real life, we would be doing this in a room in a building somewhere, and each of the other candidates would be sitting outside the room. So
right. It's
this
tricky.
is the accommodation we're trying to make. So to explain briefly, we have 2 regular seats and 1 alternate seat on the ZBA that are up for reappointment. The 2 incumbents of the regular seats are seeking reappointment. The alternate is not. In addition to the 2 incumbents, we have 4 applicants who are asking to be considered. We're interviewing those 4 applicants this evening, including yourself. On a Wednesday night, we'll have a second meeting. We will speak with the incumbents, and then following that, Scott Rogers and I will do our deliberation and arrive at a recommendation to make to the Board of Selectmen on April 12th.
Great.
All right.
Mhm.
There won't be any deliberation this evening. We're just simply interviewing the candidates and taking the information.
And I didn't see anywhere to specify whether we'd be running for regular seat or alternate. It's going to be decided.
I don't think we've asked the candidates to make that distinction.
Okay.
So we're just going to consider everyone for the 3 available seats.
Perfect.
So just to begin, we have kind of a standard set of questions we run through. How long have you been a town resident or year of residency?
Gosh, let's see, 2009. So I always say 10 years, but it's been a couple more than that now.
Okay. They keep adding up for some reason. Right?
Yeah, 12, something like that.
Right. And what prompts you to volunteer at this time, and why the ZBA rather than another town board or committee, which is not really an appropriate question for you because you do serve on other town boards and committees. So
Yeah, I started on the open space committee, just kind of attending, and then became an open space committee member. And that really made sense for me just because I worked on land conservation at the time, still do. But I did want to be on a committee or board that did a little more in the way of town planning. And so this seemed like a good opportunity for that.
Okay, well, I guess, I mean, in the sense that it's planning related
Yes.
for zoning bylaws.
Yeah, and in
ZBA
planning,
itself
I mean,
doesn't-
right. I guess what I mean is overseeing sort of the structure of the community, how it's laid out, that sort of thing,
Okay.
where things are cited.
Sorry, I'm quickly making notes here as I do this. What is your understanding of the role of the ZBA?
Yeah, I'm overseeing the zoning bylaws, petitions for variances and special permits, and approving bylaws to bring to town meeting is my understanding of what the zoning board does.
Okay, there's a little bit of separation there. Typically, it's the planning board that will formulate any bylaw revisions or recommendations. Sometimes they will, as they did this year, present those and consult with the ZBA for the ZBA's perspective on how the bylaws are constructed and what issues the ZBA has in grappling with the bylaws as they're written versus, to the extent it creates complications.
I see.
Do you understand the time commitment and preparation required both in meetings and outside of meetings to capably, constructively, and reliably serve on the ZBA? And are you able to make that commitment?
It's my understanding that you meet once a month, and I would assume I'd be, have several hours of review to do before each meeting. So yes, I am ready and willing to commit to that time.
Okay. Can you briefly state your qualifications as they pertain to serving on the ZBA?
Yeah, so in my profession, I am a regional planner for the state of Massachusetts, and in that role, I work on agricultural conservation, working with property owners, each time reviewing survey plans and citing, and I have to work with them on determining future uses of their properties and excluding certain areas from restrictions and figuring out what fits in with zoning bylaws in each town where they're at, to ensure that they're giving themselves the rights that they need to conduct whatever they'd like to do on their properties in the future. So I'm regularly looking at zoning bylaws and have been, throughout my career, and reviewing plans. So I'm very familiar with, I think, what I would have to be looking at as a zoning board member. So, yeah. I've also in the past worked with other communities on thinking about bylaws, but as you noted, that's sort of the planning board's purview to actually draft those up.
Right. Have you ever appeared as a petitioner before a ZBA or planning board?
I have, yes.
Yes.
In Northborough.
And can you describe the circumstances of that?
Yep. I have a very strangely shaped lot, and we wanted to build a garage, and we needed a variance, several variances from the setbacks.
I see. And were you successful?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Woohoo. Yeah, it was, we put a lot of work into that application, and I think the ZBA at the time appreciated it, which I hope they did. And luckily it was just a few feet, setback variance that we were looking for, but in every direction.
Right. Have you ever offered input at a ZBA or planning board public hearing where you were not, for example, the petitioner, but you had an interest in a particular matter?
On one occasion I did at a planning board meeting.
Okay. Recent or in the past?
Recent.
Okay. Can you describe what preparation or research you have undertaken relating to Town of Northborough's Zoning Board of Appeals and zoning bylaws in preparation for this?
Yeah, I reviewed not all of our bylaws, but in the past I have reviewed some of them. I skimmed them again, and have sort of read up on what a zoning board is kind of guided by in terms of reviewing variances and special permits.
Okay. Have you spoken with any individuals on the planning board or ZBA or town staff, anything like that, as part of that inquiry?
Yeah, I spoke with one zoning board member. I spoke with Paul kind of to get a sense of, his experience on the board, what it entails, and to obtain some materials that would help me learn more about the board.
Okay, thank you. Apart from the particular meetings where you were in some sense a participant, have you attended any other meetings or?
No, I don't think so. I think there might have been one occasion where the Open Space Committee was present at a ZBA meeting for something that we were working on, and I can't remember what that was, but other than my petition meetings, I have not.
Okay. On your application, you have checked yes that you regularly attend town meeting. Can you quantify that a little more precisely over the period of your residency?
Yes, I think I've gone to every single town meeting since I've been a resident, except for when I had just had a newborn. It's the only time I didn't go.
These are annual town meetings and special town meeting. I think we had one special in 2013.
Yes, I did attend that as well. Yeah.
Other than the recent marijuana prohibition warrant article in 2018, do you recall any other zoning matter that was before town meeting on a night you were in attendance that was of interest or concern to you?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember if this was a zoning matter. I think it was the moratorium on solar. And yeah, that was a tricky one. I was there, and it was a hard one because it was a scary proposition, this large solar array, but at the same time, it's the damned if you do, damned if you don't. And, seeing the alternative of a potential large subdivision on natural resources is hard to see too. And I know we need to make accommodations for solar. So that was a tricky one. I was interested in it. I didn't have, an opinion one way or the other, but I do remember that one being heated.
I do as well. Scott Rogers, do you have any other questions you'd like to add?
Yeah, just a quick follow-up, Ashley, on the offering input at a planning board meeting. What was the subject or what was the nature of that?
Yeah, it was the Bartlett Street application, the special permit application, and I just offered my knowledge about the natural resources in the area and just kind of provided that, and that perhaps next time the town zones were looked at, it could maybe be there could maybe be a line drawn there because of Stirrup Brook and a lot of the very important natural resources that are just to the north of that site.
All right, thanks.
Mhm.
Ashley, do you have any questions for Scott or I, or questions perhaps better directed at Paul regarding ZBA, how it operates, any of the requirements, qualifications that make somebody successful?
That would be good to know. What would make somebody successful as a ZBA member? In your opinion, what do you think in terms of personal demeanor or or knowledge makes somebody successful at the ZBA? Because I know that you do get a lot of applications that can be controversial and maybe difficult to deal with. Not all the time, but occasionally. That's directed at all of you. I'm sure you all have different opinions.
I'll throw that to Paul for
Does a good job.
specifics of ZBA.
Right. Thanks. Yeah, I mean, it's probably sound like a broken record now, but obviously, having legal experience and understanding, how the cases are presented to us, in my experience is being sort of an unbiased sort of judicial type of board where, like Jason had mentioned before, we're not the planning board. We don't really write specifically what the bylaws that are presented at town meeting. We are just strictly a board that is supposed to enforce what the zoning laws are. Now, we do have input to the planning board in that regard, but being sort of an unbiased, having legal experience is obviously always a plus, and having a deep understanding of our current bylaws and understanding, special permits and variances, and of course, all the different components that make up those two types of decisions. What conditions you can apply to each specific, special permit or variance. And then, secondly, town knowledge, being, very immersed in sort of the community, knowing different neighborhoods, what will impact, one side of town versus the other. I mean, I think Northborough is a very diverse town in the fact that, we have, very densely populated business and residential districts. But then we also have, two very large farms, right? So understanding what different special permits or variances could do in certain parts of town.
Yep.
So
makes sense.
Ashley, I'd like to ask for a little bit of clarification. You're currently on the Open Space Committee.
I am. Yep.
And is it correct? You are the Open Space Committee's appointee to the Master Plan Implementation Committee?
Yes.
Okay. If you were appointed to ZBA, do you see yourself relinquishing either of those other? Well, I guess it's a concern that someone would have so much responsibility concentrated.
Got it.
Just curious what your viewpoint is in that regard.
Yeah. It would be hard to relinquish one of those, but of course, I think I would. I'd really like to see through, after being on the master plan committee, as you were, I'm sure you understand, I'd really love to see that through and kind of help move some of those things along and kind of carry the conversation. There was a lot of conversation gone into our master plan and kind of being there to say, oh, this is kind of what this was meant to say, and kind of see that through. I would love to be a part of that. And I think I've been on the open space committee for a very long time. I'd be happy to, let somebody else have a turn there.
Okay, that's perhaps a little problematic in that it's open space that's appointing you to the master plan implementation.
True, right,
So,
okay. Yep.
Anyway, some consideration to give about that, yes. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Any other questions?
Nope, not at this time.
All right, well, thank you very much. We certainly appreciate your interest in applying for this position and your current and past service to the town. So
thank you.
We'll
thank you, Ashley.
Be making the decision on Wednesday night.
All right, great. Good luck.
Right. Okay, thank you very much, Ashley.
Bye.
Good night. And I have my last bit of paperwork in front of me. And our
Susie.
next applicant for this evening, Susie Sizlicka. Hello, Susie. I'm sorry, you're muted. There you are.
Sorry. It's so nice
Uh,
to actually see you guys. I haven't seen you guys in a while.
It's been a while, I know, really. We really must do this more often. Just to briefly explain, Susie, there are 3 seats up for reappointment on the Zoning Board of Appeals. 2 of those are regular voting members. 1 of those is an alternate. The incumbents of the 2 regular seats are both seeking reappointment. The incumbent in the alternate seat is not, so that one is essentially vacant. Tonight, we're doing the interviews of 4 new applicants. This will just be for informational purposes only tonight. We won't be doing any deliberation. On Wednesday night, we'll be having a second meeting where we'll speak to the 2 incumbents. And then following that, Scott Rogers and I will perform our deliberation and arrive at a recommendation to be presented to the Board of Selectmen at the April 12th meeting. Okay. So we have Scott and I here as the members of the Board of Selectmen conducting the interview, and we have Paul Tagliaferri, Clerk of the Zoning Board of Appeals, here as an informational resource for any questions you might have about the operation of the ZBA.
Okay, great.
One thing I have to do, I assume you may have received an email from me earlier today asking applicants not to view the interviews of the candidates who precede them. And so just for the record, I would like to ask you to please attest that you did not observe the interviews of any candidates who preceded you via YouTube or any other means.
I attest I did not see any other interviews. I've been
Okay.
sitting here writing my shopping list.
I was going to say, it's a lonely waiting room. And you did not receive any communications in any form from any other persons who observed those interviews conveying to you substance or details of those interviews.
No.
Very good. Thank you very much. And so we will begin. Could you tell us how long you've been a town resident or year of residency?
I'm about to enter my 9th year here. We purchased our home in June, so it's coming up to our 9-year anniversary.
Okay, that would be 2012.
Sorry.
then.
Yes. Yep. Sorry.
Got it. And what prompts you to volunteer at this time, and why the ZBA rather than another town board or committee? Obviously, you do serve on another town committee. So.
And I do volunteer in a lot of different areas in our town. I chose the ZBA because I do have a background in real estate, and I'm entering a time where one of my volunteer projects that I've been working on for a long time is coming to a close. So I was going to be having more time on my hands, and having attended a lot of meetings via YouTube and during quarantine and having it so easy, I just thought that it would be great to have some fresh new voices, even though I feel like I sometimes I do feel like a new resident, but I have been here for 9 years. So just to get some new experiences and new voices on there.
Okay, thank you. What's your understanding of the role of the ZBA?
Well, it looks at different applications for variances, and when the if the zoning code officer would deny somebody, a homeowner or a resident, for an improvement upon their land or a change in their structure, the zoning board would rule upon it, whether or not they would go along with the zoning code officer or grant a variance in that way as well. Take care of the environment, preserve the community, act by the zoning bylaws as well.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I'm just
That's okay.
frantically writing notes. Do you understand the time commitment and preparation required both in meetings and outside of meetings to capably, constructively, and reliably serve on the ZBA? And are you able to make that time commitment?
I do, and I am.
And can you briefly state your qualifications as they relate to service on the ZBA?
Sure. I am a retired attorney. I stay at home with my children right now. I've worked in commercial real estate, home real estate, mortgages, mortgage auditing. I represented different municipalities in New York State. I worked closely with zoning boards there and planning boards and town boards, like what their Board of Selectmen would be. I helped rewrite a whole zoning code for a town, prepping the different definitions that they could use, the different the impact that a new area of a zoning code would be. It was a farming town trying to really tap into the central New York State Apple Fest and, trying to become more of a touristy place. So it was presenting different kinds of zoning codes, like we could go with this, we could go with this. I worked with residents trying to figure out, okay, you want your shed there, could we move it over a foot? Could we talk to your neighbors? Like, let's get your neighbors on the phone. Let's get a letter written so that we can get the shed put in for you, or swimming pool, or where are we going to put your fence? So I've worked on the other side a little bit, but closely with the zoning boards before.
Very good. Thank you. Have you ever appeared as a petitioner before a zoning board of appeals or planning board?
No,
Okay.
I haven't.
Have you ever offered input at a zoning board of appeals or planning board public hearing?
I believe those are two meetings that I have not called into in our town.
Oh, okay.
I speak at a lot of meetings, but I do not.
So you've only been
believe that I've ever
favoring
called
the
there.
Board of Selectmen with your presence, is that right?
Oh, you can talk to the school committee as well.
Oh, I see.
You
Okay.
hear from me monthly as well.
Very good. Very good. Can you tell us what preparation or research you've undertaken relating to ZBA and zoning law, as, for example, the town code or people you've spoken with, to understand how the ZBA works and what's required?
I did read over the town code just to familiarize myself with it, because it's not something that if you were just walking down the street, you would kind of pick up. I did read it over. It's, I've read and prepared a lot of different zoning codes in my time. So I read that over. I looked over some state stuff, just trying to refamiliarize myself with, some of the topics and terms again.
Okay. Spoken with any members of town boards or town staff in the planning department, anything like that?
Not regarding this interview, no.
Okay.
I served on a focus group last week for Assabet Park for input as a parent of 3 young children. I've spoken with Scott this week about some different things over in the DPW. I've spoken with Scott Rogers about community affairs stuff probably in the last week. Yeah. So.
Okay. Very good. On your application, you have checked yes for regularly attends town meeting. Can you quantify that a little more precisely for us?
I've probably gone, in the 9 years that we've been here, I would say 7 times. The first year that we moved here, when I moved to Massachusetts, I lived in Boston. So we didn't have an annual town meeting, and I really didn't know what it was. I missed last year because my son's first communion was rescheduled for the same day because of COVID and everything. So I had to miss that, but I do love the annual town meeting.
Okay. And then finally, other than the recent marijuana prohibition warrant article at the 2018 town meeting, do you recall any other zoning matter that was before town meeting on a night you were in attendance that was of interest or concern to you?
Well, I mean, I don't know if White Cliffs or the fire station would really count. I know that different zoning definitions and articles had been changed over the years. I know that there was one on solar, because that was of particular interest to me, because we've always toyed with the idea of getting solar panels on our home. But without looking back, nothing really stands out. But I would always look it over, because as I said, I've written zoning code before. So,
right,
it's just something you you would read.
There was no particular issue that you had a particular interest in or concerned about.
No, I
basically,
would
yeah.
always prepare myself for the annual town meeting and what vote and read through the warrant and everything, but nothing in particular that would be the
Okay.
only reason why I was going there or anything.
Right. Thank you. Scott Rogers, any other questions?
No, I'd reserve the balance in case Susie had questions for Paul or us.
Yep. Yeah, Susie, do you have any questions for myself or Scott Rogers, or perhaps any questions you have are better directed to Paul relating to ZBA? But
well, I was wondering what Paul's favorite part of the ZBA, being on the ZBA, was. That was one question I did have. I always like to know why other people like being on it.
That's a good question. So, I mean, the thing I like the most about it is, I have a very deep interest in what goes on in town, and I think the ZBA has a very large impact on what does go on. And it also, to have a deep understanding of all the bylaws, right, forces you to read the town bylaws and see what's available in town. And I would also say that it's probably not, not one of the easier types of jobs, because you do have to have sort of the legal background and the framework to understand what goes into every single case, and what the different enforcements are, and what sort of how to actually come up with a solid decision for a particular case. But it's definitely a very sort of impactful type of board.
I agree. And what are the tenures of the people that have been on the board too? Like, what's the shortest tenure of somebody that's on the board right now?
I believe that would be me. I think because everyone else, well, I guess I should say, with Leslie not being reappointed, I think I have the shortest tenure, because of Fran, Dick, Brad Blanchett, and Mark Rutan have all been on the ZBA from when I started there. Exactly, I don't know, Jason, or if you know exactly how long each member has, but I know it's.
Yeah, I would say I believe Dick Rand and Mark Rutan are the longest serving members currently, and after that, I'm uncertain, I guess, between Fran and Brad. I'm also hazy because I think in some cases, like you, first served in an alternate capacity before moving into the regular seat. So
I think with Leslie leaving, I am definitely the youngest, or has the shortest tenure compared to versus whoever's the next alternate.
Right. And how long have you been on?
I've been on for about 4 years.
4 years. I did have one question that struck me. With Leslie stepping down from the alternate, are all of the candidates, like, did you have to specifically apply for the alternate, or are we all?
No, we haven't asked the candidates to select a particular seat that they're looking for. So we're just looking at the incumbents and the new candidates for the 3 positions.
Right. And do I have time for one more question?
Yes, you do. Yes.
I was just wondering, with the Master Plan Implementation Committee, and I know that there's zoning members on there, how do you see the role or the objectives of the zoning board? I know, the roles and what your job is won't change, but how do you see it changing, or just going with the implementation and working with that committee?
I'm sorry, who's that directed to?
Paul, I guess, or anyone that wants to answer.
Well, the Master Plan Implementation Committee is constructed with representation from across several different other boards and committees that we're represented through the initial master plan steering process that
Right.
resulted in the production of the master plan. The next phase is the implementation committee. And in addition to some board selected representatives from those boards to participate, we had selections made by the Board of Selectmen to put some people on there as well. As it turned out, we took essentially 3 people who were regarded as being experienced. And in particular, some of that was carryover from the Master Plan Steering Committee to provide some continuity. And we had 3 other people who had not previously been involved but had credentials in regional planning and architecture and things such as that. So
Right.
that's ultimately the decision process, or the distillation of skill sets that we arrived at. The Master Plan Implementation Committee isn't on a particular short timeline, and some of those seats are 1 year or 2 year or 3 year terms. So over that period, we would expect there may be some departures and some new people stepping into that.
Right. And I guess more of the impact that it would have on the zoning board. Like that was one of the things that, really intrigued me, because I'd never been a part or worked with a zoning board as they went through the master plan process.
So, well,
that was just a question. I didn't know how it would work.
The Master Plan Implementation Committee is kind of looking at the big picture, and some number of the recommendations that will come out of there may require revisions or additions to our zoning bylaws. That would be in the purview of the planning board to undertake that as a complementary process to the Master Plan Implementation Committee's work. The Zoning Board of Appeals, at some point they may have some input as that process proceeds based on their perspective in trying to navigate the bylaws in consideration of specific requests for relief that applicants may have. So if there's some things that are problematic in the existing zoning bylaws or proposed zoning bylaws, they would provide the perspective to try to guide that a little bit better. But the members of the Zoning Board of Appeals are not, strictly speaking, members of the Master Plan Implementation Committee or working to any significant extent in that capacity. So.
Right. I just didn't know how they would work in conjunction with, one another.
Yeah, it is very much a lot of complementary parts trying to work together to move us down the road. So.
Right.
Any other questions?
I don't think so. Any other questions for me?
I think we're set.
Great.
All right.
Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Appreciate your interest.
Thank you.
Okay.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Okay. So to wrap things up here, as stated, we have heard the applicants, the new applicants for the 3 positions on the Zoning Board of Appeals. Scott Rogers and I will be meeting again as the Board of Selectmen interview subcommittee on Wednesday night, where we will meet with the 2 incumbents who are seeking reappointment. Following that, we will engage in some deliberation and arrive at a recommendation to make to the Board of Selectmen for appointments at the Board of Selectmen's April 12th meeting, I believe it is, Monday, April 12th. That would conclude our business. Paul Tagliaferri, Clerk of the ZBA, thank you very much for being here this evening and being able to provide that perspective. I think based on the questions and your very complete and comprehensive answers, I think it was very helpful to be able to provide that perspective and give an understanding of what a participant on ZBA needs to grapple with, needs to master in order to be an effective and constructive member. So appreciate your help tonight.
Thank you. Happy to help.
Scott, if there's no other business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I think we're good to, I will move that we adjourn this meeting.
I will second that motion. This is the one and only roll call vote of the evening. Scott Rogers?
Aye.
And I, Jason Perot, vote aye also. This meeting of the Northborough Board of Selectmen Interview Subcommittee